Welcome to the Ministry and Podcast, the home for stories of lament, endurance, and hope. This podcast is a production of the Center for Church Leadership.
I've served in ministry and missions for nearly 38 years. My name is Jon Ralls, and this is my story of ministry and integrity.
Welcome back to the Ministry and Podcast. My name is Heather Walton, and
my name is Mike Edmiston. So glad you guys have joined us for another episode of the podcast. I want to thank Jon for joining us because we are talking about ministry and integrity today. And, you know, when you think about integrity, it's you're thinking, ministry, integrity, that goes without saying. Well, maybe it should go out without saying, but it doesn't go without saying, because if you're in ministry any length of time, you are going to be faced with countless opportunities to compromise your integrity. There's just opportunities around every corner. So Heather, I'm looking forward to talking about ministry and integrity today.
Yeah, me as well. Just like you said, it should be assumed that those who are following the Lord's leading and are on the path of ministry should have integrity, right? But as we know from way too many other stories, that's not always the case. And so I'm just excited to hear Jon's story of following through and being faithful and having integrity in a trial. And so, Jon, why don't you set the stage for us a little bit and tell us the background to where the story is that you're going to lead us to today?
Yeah, it actually started with my cancer diagnosis. And so that was just such a massive thing to be told you have cancer, to be told that it's not curable, and to have to pay out of pocket for so much of just the care itself during that time. And in fact, we got down to $17 in our checking account, but we made it through it. And going through that process, there were filters. I still say this and I believe it, that cancer itself was the best blessing in the world to me. But there became 3 filters. They all start with the same letter because any preacher has that kind of stuff. But for me,
that's right, man.
It was faith, family, and finances. And so I wanted to do something that made a difference in the kingdom. I wanted to make sure that I maximized time with family. And then I just didn't want to leave my wife and kids at that time. This was about 10 years ago, without anything if I were to die quickly. I mean, the doctor said, hey, the cancer you have, 1 out of 5 people will die here in the next so many years from it. He said, I don't want you to be one of those. And I'm like, great, me neither. That's our plan. So we did that. And I was working at a very large church at that time. And this was the first glimpse of this, but the budgets were huge. I mean, there's just lots of zeros behind things. In fact, many times we talked about stuff and the amount of what it costs didn't even come up. And that was really just amazing to me to be in that environment. And I saw integrity there. And so just because there are lots of zeros doesn't mean that it was bad or whatever. They were blessed with many resources. But I knew that I had a skill that I wanted to use for that first F, for my faith, and especially in places where the gospel has never been. And so Amy, my wife, and I met with a good friend of ours who worked us through an exercise saying, this must be true. And we journaled. And so we basically used it to go, Lord, if you're in this, starting this business, this nonprofit business, business's mission endeavor, that this must be true, that you are in it and you're behind it if these things. And so we just journaled them. And then I also wrote out things saying, like, we think if this is not true. And it got really specific at times. Like, it talked about things like just feeling homesick and traveling all the time and being all of these things. But Lord, if you're in this, we believe that this is true. And in that meeting, we made a decision that we just said to the Lord, this business, this ministry is yours. If you bless it financially, we are still going to cap our income at a certain level, no matter what. I mean, obviously, if we didn't hit that level, we weren't going to make it. We were going to take more, but no matter what we made, we were just going to cap our income at the very beginning. And so we just wanted it to be a blessing to be able to do that. And it started really small, and it just started with one team, and then it just kind of kept growing. And we ended up working in over 130 different countries with over 23 different mission organizations. And then we started partnering with some really large organizations. And that's really where this story that I will share with you here in a bit was we grew to a point where we had tons of data and people wanted access to that data. And we had to make a decision. Do we do that? And do we share things? And do we let people use stuff? Maybe for good reasons, but it went against what we had said from the very beginning, what we were going to do. And so it was another one of those challenges or those things of coming back to that journal and looking at what I wrote and saying, okay, what are we going to do, even if it costs us, and even if we don't go along with some of these things? So that's a little bit of the backstory and kind of how we got started.
And I love the wisdom of that, because by writing it down, you are pre-deciding. You're pre-deciding how we're going to handle this, so that when it comes up, there's not even a decision to be made because it's already been made. I mean, a lot of times when lapses of integrity happen, and I would say probably most every time, it's because that exercise wasn't done. Mm-hmm. I didn't pre-decide how I was going to handle it, and in the heat of the moment, whatever that moment is, I make the wrong decision because I hadn't built that backstop of like, no, this is the decision I made. So I love that, Jon. I love that. So just keep walking us down there. Go ahead.
Well, in the military, we have the saying of forewarned is forearmed. So any person that listens to this podcast, and all of us here on this talk together, will face issues and temptations and challenges and things. And so we know they're coming, and we know we have an enemy that wishes to destroy. And it seems like every week we hear about heroes in the faith or famous writers or pastors or this or that are following. And so we know it's going to happen. So we just have to think ahead. And so it was for us, it was, what do we not want to see? But also, even if the opposite, if the blessing happened, what constraints do we want to see right there? And so what ended up happening is we run these social media ads introducing seekers opportunities to find a person on the ground in these countries who can evangelize them, disciple them, baptize them, see the churches and simple churches formed, and all of that. We have an unbelievable amount of data. And one of the things that I learned was just in our own work and in many of the partners that we work with is the pressure of nonprofit and just of ministry is fundraising. And over and over and over, we would get asked for stories. Hey, can you tell us a story? We need this for this. And we felt that pressure of it. But one of the core DNA for us was to serve in silence as much as we could. Because I believe with all my heart, I just believe it's a sin to steal God's glory. And so I'm like, I don't mind asking for donations and whatever else for other people, but I super struggle for asking for myself. And there's probably pride in that and other issues of faith that come into it. But I just didn't want to go out there and play this game of, hey, look at us. And when honestly, everything is just spiritual of what was happening. It wasn't that our ads are amazing. It's not that we were technically amazing or whatever. We're just saying, here's Jesus to people who have never heard in their heart language, and the Spirit's working. And so what credit should we take for that? And the first indication that I saw of this that really kind of made me feel very uneasy, and actually it really angered me, was at a large gathering for an organization. And there were several of us that were in ministry doing this. And one of the guys, the other panelists there in front of all of these high net worth individuals, and they were raising millions of dollars, talked about going to a country because there was like 3,000 baptisms taking place and they're getting ready to go. And everybody was amazed at that. And that part is true. And then, so people were like super excited about this guy and his ministry. And I was talking to him afterwards, and we were sitting at a table, and I just said, what have you guys done with this? Like, that's amazing. He goes, well, we really haven't done anything to that. I'm just going to go witness it. And I'm like, but you just gave the impression that what's happening there is somehow tied to you and what you're doing over here. And it just really bothered me to see that. And so, but that was his choice, and that's what he did. And probably 6 months later, then the one organization that we were serving, that we had a huge contract, they were funding so much of what we were doing, began asking questions like, hey, we want all of the data and we need all the stories. And I have no problem sharing the data when it relates to what you have done. But when it wasn't using any of their resources and wasn't using their people or anything like that at all, that's a false then impression of work that's being done that they had no correlation to. There was nothing that they were doing that was a part of that besides maybe giving us money and funding us. But to go back out and say, hey, support us because of this thing that was happening over here, was very, very it was just so a surface level that I really was bothered by it again. And so I said, I can't share this data without getting permission from these teams and to make sure it's okay. And the result of that was, no, they didn't want to take that step. And so we lost the contract, and it was a massive blow. And I was actually overseas, and invoices hadn't been paid for quite a while from them. Like, there's tons of stuff that I should have, now I look back on, I'm like, I should have known there was a bigger problem at play here. But I'm at that point laying off people. I'm in a certain country, calling back to part of my team in certain places and having a really hard conversation with people. And I can't even be in the room with them saying, hey, we don't have the money to pay you past this next paycheck or whatever. And all of that came back to me having to make a decision of, would I go against what I said we were going to do or not do several years before that. And I think we could have done it, and there's not even any guarantees that they would have done something wrong with it. But it was just the question itself that I just couldn't get myself past to do. And so it cost us. It cost us financially. It cost us with personnel. It was unbelievably stressful. And we're still kind of recouping from that. Now we're back. We're in the green. The work's continuing to grow, but it was an unbelievably challenging time, probably one of the hardest times I've ever gone through. And it was in some ways self-inflicted, because I wrote in my journal, we're going to do this and we're not going to do that. And so I just had to say no, basically, to that situation.
Yeah, it makes me think of just when you have to count the cost of a covenant, when you enter into a relationship with the Lord or with other people, and you set these boundaries, and then those boundaries usually come at a cost, but those things can be for the kingdom. There are scenarios in which that is what you are called to do, to hold those boundary markers so that, like you said, God gets the glory. And it's not about self-promotion or, promoting somebody else that can earn you some sort of glory. So talk us through a little bit of like the internal workings that was going on inside you when you were wrestling with, like, do I stick to this thing that I've promised myself and maybe even others and written down, or
Right.
do I let it go and just see what can come of it?
We had a date. We knew we couldn't keep. We had a pretty large workforce at that point of time. We just knew we couldn't maintain beyond this. And I think just the not knowing was part of it too. Like I kept sending out messages going, "Hey, you're going to pay this invoice. What is going on?" And I understood the pressure that they were under. And so I don't want to give the impression that they were trying to be dishonest or anything. They were raising funds. They're trying to do these things. They want to be good stewards of the funds that they were investing in us. I understand all of that, and I applaud that. And so I don't want in any way give that impression. Now, I think invoices should be paid, and communication is always a good thing to do. But I still like this group. I still have some great friends that are working with this other ministry that are there. So there's no hard feelings in that part. There's just trust that was broken on it. But the deeper level of trust that was the one that I felt like to the Lord of saying, like, we're not going to we're not going to play this game, which is what it almost is at times. I feel like so much that I see is playing a game of fundraising and of having to always share the victories and always have to say, hey, look how good we are. And maybe we don't say somebody, against somebody else or whatever, but we can almost can imply like, we're the best or whatever. And we aren't the best. And there's things we don't know. And we would give stuff away and we will fire ourselves if we're not doing a good job. And I've had people go, well, why are you doing that? And it's the same thing. It's because I started this. I wanted to start it with an integrity of these are the things that I felt like was from the Lord. And so I'm not trying to put that on somebody else, but for us, if this was from the Lord, then he was going to provide and he's going to do these things. And I just didn't feel the desire or the need to go out there and to beat down the bush of doing all these things. And so we talked to fundraisers. I talked to spiritual mentors of mine saying, what do I do? I was talking to other ministries that we were serving saying, hey, we may not be able to continue doing what we do for you. I was practicing, and this is in hindsight, you look back and you go, well, this was good or this was bad. And so one of the things I was trying to do was open book leadership. In other words, everybody on my team, all of our employees knew what our finances were. They didn't know what each other's salaries were. They knew what the total salary cost was, but they didn't know what one person was getting over another. And so I was very open with them about, hey, we're in a tough spot. And I don't know if that was the right call. I don't, if I had it to do over, I'm not sure I would be as open book. And the reason why is not because I want to keep secrets. Even the church that I go to, we say all the time, we just don't keep secrets. It's not that, but by me being so open book, I brought stress to the rest of our team and uncertainty that they just didn't know what was going to happen. And that was really my burden to bear and to carry. And so if I had it to do over, I might not do the open book thing or not maybe share as much on that. But as it was going through, it was a ton of prayer. Satan really attacked a lot. And there was just the challenge of the internal integrity. So it wasn't even sin. It was just, what did you say you were going to do? For me, in my journal, what did I say I would do or not do? And I felt like it was crossing that line. And so ultimately I had to say, no, like we can't give you this data. I will ask for permission. But even then, it doesn't correlate to what your ministry is doing over here. And yeah, it was just really hard to have to say no because I knew what was going to come next as a result of it.
It's really tough when like you said, you knew what saying no was going to mean. I mean, it's going to cost personnel. Well, I mean, those are people. Those are people with families. I mean, that's not insignificant. That's a huge burden to carry. But because you were so transparent, I mean, you journaled it. Like I said, I pre-decided. I know what I'm going to do. But because you were so transparent, was there any pushback, even internally, of saying, Jon, I know you said this, but if you make a different decision, look at everything that can go differently. I mean, was there pressure to do something different?
There wasn't pressure. There was hurt, and there was some anger towards me. And some of the people we had to let go cried. Some were mad at me. And that's the hard parts to that. But I think the whole team knew from the very beginning, like this wasn't a one-off. I only have a few things. I just keep saying them over and over. I just got my mantras, and this was one of them. And part of it was being open source, just always giving whatever we have is yours. We'll give it out. We have things we're working on right now. It'll software and tools that will be free, and we're just going to give them away. That's just part of that heavenly economy. But I never did get feedback, at least to me, to my face, of, hey, no, you need to go ahead and just cross this line. We talked about it as a team, but ultimately, it was my call, but I didn't have any feedback from anybody else saying, no, you should do it or whatever else. But I think the open book part was the part where I think that's what caused the pain for a lot of the others. Not the decision, but just the uncertainty of about 4 months of not knowing for sure. It's hard to work, and when you just don't know if your job's gonna still be there or whatever else. And so,
and that's a tough balance of leadership. It's so hard because you want to be transparency is, we tend to think of it like it's a good thing.
right.
We want to be an open book. We want to be transparent, and yet, as leaders, sometimes we have to keep things close because you said it's my burden to bear. I mean, looking back, what would you say are some of the, like, here's a stake in the ground of this is where you're transparent, or this is where, no, that's for an inner leadership team to deal with. How do you navigate deciding between the two?
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying, in hindsight, I look back, I don't think I would have shared as early some of these things. Maybe. Honestly, Mike, I don't know. Even if I had it to do over, I don't know for sure that I would do it different. I know the decision, I wouldn't change the decision.
Right.
I feel like sometimes we just think we have to just keep going and we have to keep existing. And like that cancer taught me, well, no, you don't. Like, we're all going to die. That's going to end. And we start things, and we start ministries, and we start outreach and churches and whatever. And there's a life cycle. I mean, the Bible talks about that. And so, to fight against that seems kind of just like crazy to do it. But I don't know on that one. I do know this, that we were over leveraged with one big partner on this one, the one that we had to say no to. Probably 60% of our total revenue coming in was coming from this one partner. And so, from a business side, a ministry side on that, financially, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be so heavily put all your eggs in one basket. But even that, if you gave me the opportunity again, I probably would do it again. Maybe either I'm just not that smart and keep making the same mistake, but actually I feel like the 2 years that we did partner with, actually I partnered with them for like 6 years, but the 2 years heavily that they were financially involved with this stuff, there was so much good ministry done. Thousands and tens of thousands of people were saved. People from seeing an ad saying, how can I pray for you? So the very first time of getting a Bible, to talking to a person face to face in a country where they didn't think anybody knew who Jesus was, that there was no Christians in this country, to see that happen, to see churches formed and that kind of stuff. Wow. So I had some stress. So we, like that, it's just, okay. I think I might even just would have done it again. I don't know how else to do it when given the opportunity to do that differently. I probably just wouldn't share as much early. I did share even more with some of my inner leadership team, but still, yeah, I like the idea of open. My oldest son said a long time ago, he felt like that knowledge should always be free. And that's just always stuck with me. And so that's why we give away what we do and do what we do. And that's why, even working when it's bad things with the team, I just felt like I needed to be open with them. And so I don't even know if I would change anything for sure. I don't know what I could change to. Maybe if I was presented with the right answer, hopefully I would make that right call. But as I stand today, I don't know what else I would have done or could do differently, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you being honest with us, just as you were with your team, and not just trying to tie a tidy bow up for us like, yep, I have all the right answers now. And so, having that hindsight and that wisdom, but just saying, yeah, it was a struggle. And I would hold my ground and make the same decision. I think that that's helpful for us to just kind of sit with you and have that tension alongside you of, I mean, that is the thing that leaders have to balance is, yeah, where am I honest? Where am I vulnerable? What's the nuances and the differences there? So I appreciate you not having a perfect 3-point sermon for us about this is the exact right way to go about this. Because that's what we're talking about here. Those real conversations of the messy middle, the things that don't work out perfect, and we can just say, oh, well, all to God's glory and everything was great. Amen. You
Yeah.
know? So I'm a little bit curious. Maybe we can kind of take a step back for a moment. And if you could give us like a timeline, I'm just trying to think through like, how did this intersect with like your cancer journey and even to like where you're at now? So like, where was that all at?
Yeah, so we started Kavanaugh. It's been about 8 years, or 9 years now. And I did a year and a half of heavy chemotherapy. And I actually was in Tunisia sitting in this room at night, and you kind of don't go walking around that country just out on your own. Um, so I was kind of holed up at night after some meetings, and I just started doing some really deep YouTube diving into seeing like the kind of chemotherapy I was doing and the overall survivability to it and everything else. And I realized I have no immune system. I am traveling all over the world all the time. And this chemotherapy doesn't mean I get an extra day of life at all. There was no indication that meant I got any more life, any increase in overall survivability. So I went back to the VA. At this point, I was going to the VA for my maintenance chemo, and I just said, just want to stop. And they're like, okay, made me sign a bunch of stuff. And so that was the end of the chemo and all of those kind of things. And so every year since then, right around this time, we've done, my wife and I, what we call the no tumor tour. And so all year long through, if you can imagine spending probably, I mean, hundreds of thousands, if not more dollars for marketing on a credit card, you get a lot of points for that. And then when you're flying in really bad seats, but all over the world, you get a lot of airline points. And so we would cash in those points every year, and we would go on a cruise, or we will go someplace. And we got another one coming up here real soon that we're going to do. So that's been going on every year since that. And every year over year, Kavanaugh has continued to grow in its scope and countries and things like that. And even then, this story I'm telling you here started about a year and a half ago was when it hit. And it was I was meeting with our largest ministry partner, the teams that we served, and they were all around the world. I'm not using names, but every person in the world knows who these people are. And we were running almost all of their digital engagement around the world for them. And I'm sitting in their headquarters, and I was like, we may not be getting paid enough to keep doing what we're doing here. And that was my anniversary on the day we're there and doing that. And so it wasn't a very romantic anniversary, but it was just another stressful time to that. So that was about a year and a half ago. And then, we lost that contract. And then we ended up, a knock-on effect of that was then we lost one other contract because we couldn't continue doing as much with the reduced staff. We did a ton with that. And we actually was another benefit. Our systems and processes and software, I think were amazing. And that I come back to one of my leadership team, actually a graduate of Central, who is a systems thinker and got his MBA in global supply chain management. And he came in and took what I'd been doing for the first 6 years. He was my first hire. And he just said, everything right now is in your head. And like, if you get hit by a bus or this cancer comes back, like we need a plan. And so he developed these systems, which really allowed us to scale, but also survive for a while. And the net result, even though like there's things I don't know and things I've learned and everything, was we're at a point now where we have organizations and mission teams and local believers all working together. And so we are in the green again. We are operating in these coalitions that are going in the hardest places in the world, and it's growing. We're going to potentially double year over year just the amount of countries that we're getting to operate in doing it. And so maybe we wouldn't have done that if we would have just had that, been able to rely upon a known financial source coming in. Maybe that urgency on our part wouldn't have been there to be able to do it. I don't know, but the Lord has blessed it. And I'm very, very grateful. And the other part of that was I took a cut, and I'm working full time at a church as well. And so I get to do all my fun stuff with Kavanaugh, and I get to do hands-on ministry again, which is something that I've missed in the last almost 10 years of just being online through our business and that kind of stuff.
There are so many intersections of your story and people who are in all different kinds of ministries. Like, I mean, I remember when I was a local church pastor, I remember specifically one meeting, but I remember, being told basically, we need to do this because this is what they want, and they are the big givers of the church. They're the ones that are funding this whole thing, so we need to keep them happy. Well, the problem is what they wanted was against the DNA of who we were. It was against what we had set out as a leadership team. Like, this is the church we're going to be. This is what we're going to do. This is our mission. This is our vision. Right. Outside of that, we're going to say no. It was outside of that, but there was a real cost attached to it. And, it was a challenge, but our leaders stood our ground. And they went away, and so did their money. And it wasn't fun because there was a real cost attached to that. That'll scale with anybody in any church of any size, any ministry of any size. There's always going to be a chance to compromise your integrity, or even just compromise your vision and mission. Like you said, it may not have necessarily been sinful, but it was against this is who we're going to be. We are going to plant our flag here. So if somebody's facing a decision like that, where, there's a difficult decision to make because there's a real cost attached to it, what would you say to them as they're facing that down?
It's a great question and great application as well, Mike, because that's what was in my mind as well on this, was that I think we will all have these times where maybe as a college, hey, well, if we offer this, we could grow, but it moves us. It moves the needle, even if it's slightly away from this is why we exist. And to know why we exist, to know, that is so important. So that's that identity is what lends itself to then your integrity. And so what I would say to the individuals is none of us are what we do. Our identity is not tied to what we do. Our identity is not tied to what we have. And our identity is not tied to what people say about us. We are children of the risen King. And that matters more than anything else in the world. And if he is alive and if God is true, then the resources are there. And if the King of Kings says, I'm bringing you in this business or your life into this or your church into this, then it's his responsibility to sustain us. If we grow, it's because of him. It's because of his spirit at work. It's not because we have great fog machines and we know how to manipulate people or whatever else on that. We have lost the plot. We have lost the DNA at that point. And so to be simply just a child of the King and to serve and to be obedient and to be faithful and to be able to say, no, this isn't my battle. I don't have to do this one. I don't have to say this. I don't have to play this game. I'm just going to trust God into it and then be okay with the results. Because we know that our Father loves us, then even if Kavanaugh ceases to exist tomorrow, I praise him for what he's allowed us to do. He doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't owe any of us anything. We get the privilege of joining God in the renewal of all things. And so that's the joy of this. And so knowing why we exist and who we are and not allowing the world or other people to define us by what they say, or what we have, or what we do, but whose we are. And that's what's most important, at least to me. And whether you're doing ministry or you're just in a business or whatever you're doing, a parent, that's the most important thing. That's the most important thing. That's the most important. That's the most important.
Okay, there's a lot of pressure to have your life mapped out, but what if God is inviting you to discover what's most important instead of chasing someone else's expectations? At Central Bible University, you're going to find biblical truth, genuine community, and higher education all come together. Whether you already know your calling or you're still seeking it, you'll find mentors, friends, and an environment where you can grow with confidence and faith. Because the goal isn't just earning a degree, whether it's the marketplace or ministry. It's actually becoming who God has called you to be. And that doesn't just happen on accident. Visit centralbible.edu for more information. That's centralbible.edu. Central Bible University. Faithful on purpose.
That's the most important. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that is the wisdom that we try to share here and the stories that we're telling. I mean, that is the baseline truth that we have is we share these things because we are children of the King and we're trying to figure out this kingdom living together, what it looks like to be in ministry. I mean, I know for me personally, as someone who's helped start a nonprofit, you know, there's lots of wisdom there of staying true to that purpose, that mission that you have, and being able to say no and hold things with a very open hand to the Lord and say, okay, whatever you place here, that's what, you know, I'm entrusted with, and I'll be a steward to that and nothing else. Yeah. And if something falls out, then that's okay. And I'm not shaken because of it, but like just an open hand. And that's what I see when you share this story is just that open-handed posture of it's the Lord's. And so as you will.
Right. You know, I think the pressure comes back to as well of how do we define success? And so in ministry and in business and in everything else I've been around, it seems like success is equated with bigger. Oh, you're successful if your church is big, your college is big, your business is big, or whatever else on these kind of things. I'm not so sure those are the right metrics. I think the key performance indicators are to be faithful. Yeah, we have to work hard. Jon Ralls, who's been a part of Central's story, and Gareth Reese, who taught, you know, Acts forever there at Central and stuff. I remember Jon Ralls one time talking to me. He's like, yeah, you know, you plan your work and then you work your plan, but ultimately it's God that determines success on that. And that's just really true. I've always, that's stuck with me. And so I think sometimes success isn't bigger. It may just mean deeper. It's being faithful. Being faithful is a success. That's the win. And so maybe the integrity as well comes back to what's a win? What's it look like to win here? Now, yeah, the world's lost. The people need to know who Jesus is. But to think that it's on us or that we have to do that, or that somehow if we're not in a mega church, we're not successful. No. The thing is what you just said, Heather. What is God placing in our hands? Then that's what we are to be responsible for. And if we're in a church, one of the churches that I got to pastor at before I went and started doing missions work is in Leonard, Missouri. There are more cows than people in that town, right? But I love that church and I love those people. And I didn't feel like I was not being successful because I wasn't preaching at some huge church or whatever else. I was investing in people's lives that I care about and that God cares about. And so I think sometimes it's the integrity butts up against this battle for success or what the world will say, or even like Mike, what you were saying, a board might say, well, we've got to be successful or we have to have this or to do whatever else on it. And I've just seen God work in too many miraculous ways, not relying upon us and our own cleverness and our own wisdom and our own power. And he just kind of says, you step back and watch me and I can do what I want to do. And I especially think in this 21st century in ministry now, that is going to carry much further with this next generation of youth and the people that are coming in, is to hand over leadership, walk with people, let them make these mistakes, but let them define what success is, but don't put this pressure on young graduates from Central or just anybody out there in ministry that they have to be what the world or even the church world might say is successful. Just be faithful, be obedient. And that's enough. That's the win right there.
Yeah. When I read scripture, I don't think I ever remember God saying be successful, but there's all kinds of times where he says be faithful. And that really is the metric. And I mean, you're hitting like so many things of what you said. I led a turnaround church for, a lot of years, and turnaround churches, a lot of times it's slow, hard work. And so I'd go to these groups of pastors and, the question everybody, how many are you running? How many are you running now? Like, that's the question. And like, I was always representing the smallest church in the room, and I'm not proud of it, but like, I would take that personally. It would go straight to my ego, because I was finding far too much of my identity in my ministry. And I hadn't yet learned to make that separation. Like you said, you're a child of God. That's who you are. John Hampton on one of our previous podcast episodes talked about this. Like, your identity never changes. Now, your assignment can change. Yes. Assignments change all the time, but your identity doesn't change. But man, when identity and assignment get intertwined, and it did for me for a while, that, I tell you what, that's when opportunities to compromise your integrity will rear their head, because now I have so much, my identity is on the line. If this thing goes down, so I'm going down. My identity is going down in flames. That's a really dangerous place to be. So how did you learn to make that separation of, your identity versus your ministry?
When you surround yourself with people that know who you really are, they're not going to ever let you get that big head.
That's right.
And I think the biggest thing is when we start believing our own press releases and whatever else on stuff. And so having kids is a great thing to be able to, because they just see you for who you really are.
They do.
And I think that's also then just learning how to like even just ask for forgiveness from my kids. Like, I screwed up. I was wrong. I got angry. I whatever else on that or whatever. Like, you just have to learn that humility, because the people that really see you. And I think, I've been so thankful to get to do some ministry with some massively well-known names of people. But to be honest with you, and I've said this to, I won't say the person's name, but like he wrote a book that's like the biggest selling book besides the Bible ever. So, and I was having dinner with this dude, and I felt like I was just listening to the book as he would talk. Like, it was just like reading his book, but not in a good way. And there was a few others at the dinner, and people were just enamored by him. And at one point, he was talking about, we've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And I was like, I'm really thankful for that. But I know this lady that's like in China that's got like so many different house churches. I'm really impressed with her or whatever. Cause like, that's the kind of stuff that I look at. I'm like, these people that nobody will ever write a book about, that nobody's making movies. Nobody's even asking them to come on podcast or whatever else. Like, they're just super amazing, faithful men and women that are just out there. They're not even getting a salary. They're being persecuted. Their life is on the line. Those are the people that I look at and I go, those are my heroes. Same thing. That's why I love missions. Yes. I love serving the people that are the frontline workers that are out there. And so I think, the Lord's made it very clear of every bit of my shortcoming. And if I miss them, somebody else will make sure and say those to me. But I was teaching a perspectives class last night. I was at another church and I was getting to teach. And I was talking about imposter syndrome, because I was in northern India. And at this point, we'd seen some success, what people would say success. And I was there to teach church planting stuff, simple church type work, DMM type things, to a room about 40 church planners, all Indian. And I was like, hey, how many of you all have started at like 5? Every hand went up. And I kept going up on the number, and the hands never dropped. And I was like, how many of you all planned it? And one guy's like, oh, I've started 1,000. Another guy's like, oh, I've got like 10,000 over here, of simple churches, of groups of 10 to 20 or more people that are meeting every week and gathering together. And I literally had told these men through the interpreter that was there as well. I was like, I have nothing to offer you. I need to sit at your feet and just learn from you. But these men didn't have fancy things. They didn't have the light shows. They didn't have big things or whatever else, but they are some of the biggest heroes in the faith. And so I think that's been the big part for me, is the Lord's allowed me to see true heroes, men and women who are amazing people, who are out there without fanfare, without the applause of man, who are doing amazing things. And also, I've seen even very, very close friends of mine who have lost their integrity through sexual things or financial things or whatever else. And yet they were the ones getting the applause. And that just scares me to death. And so,
I have said so many times, I don't think we're set up for fame. I don't think, I mean, by and large, I don't think fame is healthy. I mean, I think it can rot our souls.
Right.
And I mean, you're telling so many stories that just remind me of that. Like, I mean, and it's all relative. If you have a stage and you have influence over a group of people, even if it's a small group, there's 30, 40, 50, whatever, you have a platform, you have influence, keep a check on your ego.
Yeah.
Because it can get sideways real quick.
Yep. Yeah, that's very, very true. And so I think this is why having a team is always a good thing, and people that will tell you the truth. That's why my biggest accountability partner is my wife. And that's hard. Like, that's really hard, but that you got to have the people that you can share the truth, and they're going to speak the truth. And then a leadership team of people around you. And I think multi-generational as well. Because if you get just the same age people and a bunch of people together, and they're the only ones making decisions, then you're going to get some blind spots that come in there.
For sure, yeah.
Men and women, I'm very much an egalitarian. I think put them all in there, let them use their gifts, let everybody lead, and young and old. I think we all have a role to be able to do that. And if anything, then my role now is at 56 is to equip the next generation and let them lead. And then how do I support them and do what I can do to make sure that they don't get the same scars that I have. They're going to make new ones. And I encourage that. Actually, that's part of business, is making mistakes. But, and I say this all the time, we're going to make mistakes. Let's just not make the same ones. Let's learn.
That's right.
But let's keep making mistakes, because that's how we move forward. And that's how we learn. That's if from a little baby on up, we learn through falling and making mistakes. So yeah, I think that having the team, having family, having friends, and not feeling the pressure that you have to be something. Just don't drink your own Kool-Aid on that stuff. Just keep it humble.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of your wisdom, all the truth that you've shared. Thanks for sharing a little piece of your story, and for reminding us of that humility and faithfulness that we are called to. And so we really appreciate you sharing with us.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and I appreciate what you all are doing. This is great. I think it's meeting a need, and I don't know of anything that was like this when I was first getting started. And I will even say that when I first got started, I jumped right into a preaching position. I didn't have those older mentors and things like this to learn from during that time as well. And so I probably made a lot more mistakes than I needed to, just because I didn't have anybody to do that, or didn't have a resource like this. So thanks for letting me be a part of it. And it's just great to hang out with you all today.
Yeah. I love that we get to platform wise people, and you've definitely shared wisdom with us today. So Jon, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Hey, stick around, because the conversation's not over. Mike and Heather are going to continue to unpack everything we just heard, but we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the conversations that we're having on the Ministry and podcast? Is it helpful? Are there conversations you wish we would have? Do you have a story that you want to share on the Ministry and podcast? Or just swing by and drop us a line, because we'd love to hear from you. Send us a message at ministryand@ccleadership.org.
Well, there's a lot to take away from this episode. Just want to thank Jon for taking the time to share so much of his story. I mean, one of the first things really early on in the conversation, he just very casually brought up he was diagnosed with cancer and called it, a blessing. I mean, just something he was so thankful for. Like that really set the tone for the whole conversation. And I know he said his story was about ministry and integrity, and it absolutely was, but you could subtitle it Ministry and Humility, because he has seen some really remarkable things happen within the influence sphere of his ministry, and yet, the guy is just so humble, and so that's one of the main things I heard in the conversation.
Yeah, and I know I said this to him in some way during the conversation, but just having to sit in that tension and not be like, but everything's great. And like having that tidy bow, I think, is just so helpful, because that's the way life is. That's the way ministry is. There's lots of loose threads still, and there's lots of mess, and you second guess yourself and you wonder, like, okay, I know that God called me to this thing. Am I being faithful in the way that I was called? And so, I think it was really helpful that he brought it back to, he preached at us for a minute of like your identity. And so I loved that and appreciated him bringing that back around to, this is who you are. And so nothing else is shaken. Your kingdom, like the kingdom is not shaken. So you're fine. And whatever the decision, even if you could go back, it's okay, because the Lord is in it and he is moving things forward, and you are just to be faithful.
Yeah, and I meant what I said, like we are on such dangerous ground when we believe not our ministry or our position, but our identity is at stake. And that's when, man, that just opens the door for so many compromises, because it's become who I am. So he's just got a really healthy outlook on that. But you're right. I mean, we're so ingrained with wanting, and they lived happily ever after. Everything's tied up in this night-knee bow. And I look back and, and I was even told this, like, when you follow God long enough, you'll look back and every single thing will make sense and you'll know why it happened and everything. And I'm 48 years old. No, that is not at all the way this thing works. I look back and be like, okay, was God with me? Yes. Was God in it? Yes. Do I know why that happened? No. Like I have no idea why that happened and why this didn't happen and why this person suffered and this hard thing happened. And part of faith is learning to be okay with unanswered questions. With, you put it like the mess. It doesn't tie up in a nice, neat bow. And I appreciate him being honest about that.
Yeah. And honestly, I kind of love that our podcast name itself lends itself to a little bit of that openness. Like it's ministry and a whole lot of things that you could fill in the blank with. And so I love that we can just tell so many different stories in many different ways and in different voices from around the world. And so I think that hopefully will connect with lots of different people who get the chance to listen. And so we hope that you will share this and you will continue to listen and journey alongside of us as we figure out all the things that are ministry and.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for helping us honor this story on the Ministry and podcast. This has been a production of the Center for Church Leadership, hosted by Heather Walton and Mike Edmiston, producer Jonathan Burian. The theme song is Rebels by New Alchemist. For more content, you can find us wherever podcasts are found and on YouTube at Ministry and Podcast. That's Ministry AND Podcast. If you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at ministryand@ccleadership.org, or just visit ccleadership.org to discover how the Center for Church Leadership can help you and your church lead strong.